Part 1. The Galactic Concordance Forum floated in the quiet dark between stars, a glittering jewel of diplomacy built by hundreds of species over 200 years. Its towers were made of light-bent crystal, its halls filled with voices speaking in 1,000 tongues. Every day envoys came to argue, to trade, to make peace, or sometimes just to watch each other and wonder. Among them, humans had always stood out, not because they were loud or strange, though they were both, but because they never stopped asking questions. Daniel Porter stood at the edge of the main chamber, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the crowd. He wore the standard Earth delegation uniform, plain gray with a small blue circle over the heart, the only symbol Earth still used in space. Around him, Virelians hissed softly as they moved, their long limbs clicking against the polished floor. Qatari delegates floated in gentle anti-grav bubbles, their skin shifting colors with every word they spoke. Even the silent Zenthari were present, their tall, smooth bodies glowing faintly in the low light. For 50 years, Daniel had come here. He had argued over mining rights on dead moons, helped draft emergency aid for plague-stricken colonies, and once spent 3 weeks negotiating the return of a lost Virelian child who had wandered into a human cargo bay. He knew these beings. He respected them. But today he would say goodbye. He stepped forward. The chamber's central dais rose beneath his feet, lifting him into view of every envoy. A hush fell, not the usual respectful pause before a speech, but something deeper, heavier. They sensed something was wrong. "Friends," Daniel began, his voice calm, clear, and human. "Today I speak not as a negotiator, not as a diplomat, but as the final representative of Earth in this forum." A ripple moved through the crowd. The Qatari bubbles dimmed. A Virelian dropped its data slate with a sharp clack. "For over a century," Daniel continued, "humanity has sat among you. We joined your treaties. We shared our science. We listened. We learned. And for that we are grateful." He paused, not for effect, but because the next words were hard to say. "But we have made a decision, effective immediately. Earth withdraws from the Galactic Concordance Forum. All human delegates will depart within the hour. All joint operations will cease. All communications will be suspended. Silence. Not a single whisper. Not even the hum of the air recyclers seemed to dare break the stillness. "We do not do this out of anger," Daniel said softly, "nor fear. We simply must go." He stepped down from the dais. No one moved to stop him. No one shouted. They just watched, stunned, as he walked toward the human exit archway. His boots made soft sounds against the floor. Human sounds, ordinary, final. Behind him, confusion bloomed like a slow storm. The Virelian envoy Krell turned to his aide and whispered, "What does this mean?" The Qatari elder, Nisa, pulsed a deep indigo, grief or alarm. The Zenthari remained still, but their inner light flickered in a pattern no one had ever seen before. Daniel did not look back. Outside the chamber, in the human wing of the station, the last of Earth's staff were already packing. Data cores were wiped. Personal items vanished into sealed cases. Screens went dark one by one. There was no panic, no shouting, just quiet efficiency, as if they had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. Lena Ruiz stood by the observation window, her fingers resting on the cool glass. She had spent 12 years here, teaching alien children Earth songs, translating poetry, building bridges between minds that saw the universe in completely different ways. Now she was leaving it all behind. "You okay?" asked Eli Carter, walking up beside her with a half-packed bag slung over his shoulder. Lena nodded, but her eyes were wet. I never thought it would end like this. No warning, no goodbyes," Eli sighed. "Orders are orders. And you know what they say? When Earth speaks, it doesn't explain. It just acts." She turned away from the window. "Do you think they'll understand?" "Who, the aliens?" Eli gave a small, sad laugh. "They'll try, but they won't get it. Not yet." Down in the shuttle bay, the last human vessel waited, sleek, silver, unmarked. No flags, no names. Just a ship ready to go home. Daniel boarded last. He handed his access badge to the station AI at the airlock. The machine beeped once, then said in its calm voice, "Thank you for your service." "Ambassador Porter." "You're welcome," Daniel said. The airlock sealed behind him with a soft hiss. Inside the shuttle, the crew sat in silence. No one spoke as the engines powered up. No one cheered. No one cried. They just sat, faces calm, eyes fixed on the view screen as the great forum station shrank behind them. Back in the chamber, the envoys finally began to move. Krell demanded an emergency session. Nisa sent a priority pulse to her homeworld. The Zenthari recorded everything, every second, every breath. But none of them noticed the small data burst that left the human shuttle just before it jumped to light speed. A single encrypted packet, aimed not at any alien world but straight for Sol. It carried no message of war, no threat. Just a string of numbers, a coordinate, and one word. Ready. As the shuttle vanished into the starry dark, the forum remained. But something had changed. The balance had shifted. The galaxy had lost a voice it never truly understood, and gained a mystery it would spend centuries trying to solve. And far away, on a quiet blue planet circling an average yellow star, lights began to go out. Not from fear, not from collapse, but from choice. Humanity was done talking. Now it was time to become something else. Part 2. Weeks passed and the silence from Earth grew heavier. At first, the other species thought it was a bluff. Humans were known for their dramatic gestures, walking out of meetings, shutting down trade lanes for moral reasons, even recalling their ambassadors over small insults. But this time was different. No human ship answered hails. No colony broadcast its usual weather reports or market prices. Even the deep space relay stations that humans maintained near the Helios Rift went dark, their lights winking out one by one like candles in a storm. Lena Ruiz had been one of the last humans many aliens saw. She had worked on Ceres 9, a neutral research moon where scientists from dozens of species shared labs and lunch tables. She taught Qatari children how to sing Amazing Grace and helped Varelian engineers understand human humor. Now her station sat empty. Her quarters were neat, her desk cleared, her favorite mug left behind on the shelf. The only thing she left behind was a voice log recorded the night before she left. "We're not leaving because we're angry," her voice said, soft but steady. "We're leaving because we finally understand." The log spread through the concordance like a rumor. Some called it a riddle. Others called it a warning. The Zenthari studied it for patterns. The Qatari played it during their morning cycles. No one knew what it meant, but everyone felt its weight. Meanwhile, strange things began to happen at the edges of human space. A Varelian scout ship reported a flash of violet light near the ruins of Proxima Outpost, light that bent the stars behind it. A Qatari mining drone picked up a signal that sounded like a heartbeat, though no life signs were present. And then there were the ships. A derelict Qatari freighter, long abandoned after a reactor failure, suddenly powered up. Its engines roared to life, but not with the usual blue flame. This light was deep violet, humming with a frequency that made nearby sensors glitch. The freighter moved with impossible grace, weaving through asteroid fields as if it knew every rock by name. Then, without warning, it vanished into a tear in space no bigger than a door. The Concordant sent probes. They found nothing but cold metal and faint traces of human nanotech embedded in the freighter's hull. Tiny machines that rebuilt circuits, rewrote code, and then dissolved into dust. It was clear, humans had touched that ship. But why and how? Back on Earth, cities emptied. Not in chaos, but in calm. Families packed what they needed. Schools closed. Factories shut down. People walked to spaceports not with fear, but with quiet purpose. Massive arcs rose from the oceans and plains, their hulls gleaming under the sun. They did not head for Mars or the moons of Jupiter. They pointed toward the black between stars and left without fanfare. Eli Carter watched it all from a distance. He had been stranded on a backwater moon called Vexus after his shuttle was grounded for diplomatic review. A polite way of saying the Concordants didn't trust humans anymore. From his tiny apartment above a repair shop, he monitored every scrap of news he could find. He saw the arcs leave. He saw the last lights on Earth go dark. He saw the silence spread like fog. He tried to contact anyone, friends, old colleagues, even his sister in New Vancouver. No answer, not even static. Just empty channels. One night he received a broken transmission from Luna. It was faint, scrambled, but real. He patched it through his old Concordance decoder, the one he'd kept hidden under his bed. The screen flickered. A woman appeared, Maya Torres, head of the Lunar Archive. She looked tired but calm. "Project Exodus is complete," she said. Her voice was clear, as if she were speaking just to him. "We spent centuries trying to fit into your galaxy. But we were never meant to negotiate borders or ration antimatter. We were meant to ask the next question." The screen cut to static, then showed schematics. Strange, beautiful patterns of light and data, woven through something called dark matter filaments. Eli didn't understand most of it, but one phrase stuck. Consciousness network. Another. Beyond space-time. His hands shook. He played the message again, and again. Outside his window, the twin moons of Vexus cast long shadows. Somewhere out there, humanity was changing. Not dying, not hiding, evolving. The Concordance held emergency meetings daily now. Species that had ignored each other for generations sat side by side, united by fear. The Varelians argued that humans had built a weapon. The Qatari believed they had achieved spiritual transcendence. The Zenthari said nothing, but their glow had turned a deep, troubled red. Trade slowed. Patrols doubled. Every ship that entered human space was scanned, tracked, and turned away. Yet nothing came out. No attacks, no messages, just absence. Then came the whispers. A freighter captain near the Orion Veil swore he heard a human voice in the static between stars. A Qatari sensor picked up a pattern in cosmic background radiation that matched old Earth lullabies. A Zenthari probe drifting near Neptune recorded a single pulse of coherent thought, clear, calm, and utterly alien in its depth. The galaxy began to wonder, had humanity left? Or had they become something the rest of the universe couldn't see? Eli packed his bag that night. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew he couldn't stay. He left a note for his landlord. Gone to find the truth. He boarded a cargo hauler heading toward the edge of the Sol system. The captain, a grizzled Varelian named Jor, asked why a human would want to go back to a dead world. Eli just said, "Because someone has to remember what we were before we became what we are." Jor nodded slowly. He'd lost a brother in the Helios skirmishes, but he didn't hold it against Eli. "Humans always were strange," he muttered, "but you kept the galaxy honest." As the ship jumped to light speed, Eli looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, his people were gone, not in body but in form. And yet he felt them, not in signals or ships, but in the quiet spaces between thoughts. The galaxy watched in terror, not because humanity had attacked, but because it had simply stepped away. And in doing so, it had shown everyone else how small they truly were. Eli closed his eyes. He didn't know what he would find in the ruins of Earth, but he knew one thing: the story wasn't over. It had just changed shape. Part 3. 6 months after humanity left the Forum, the galaxy still could not settle. Fear had turned into a kind of quiet dread that clung to every starport, every council chamber, every lonely ship drifting between worlds. No one knew what humanity had done, but everyone felt the change in the air, like the moment before a storm that never comes. Then, the impossible happened. A Qatari freighter named the Whisper of Dawn had been adrift for years near the ruins of Proxima Outpost. Its reactor had failed during a solar flare, and the crew had been rescued long ago. The ship itself was left to float, a ghost among ghosts. But one morning, sensors across 3 systems picked up a surge of energy from its location. Not an explosion, not a distress call, just a steady rhythmic pulse like a heartbeat made of light. The Varelian patrol ship Iron Talon was the first to arrive. Captain Jor, yes, the same Jor who had carried Eli Carter towards Sol, ordered his crew to scan the freighter from a safe distance. What they saw made no sense. The Whisper of Dawn was moving. Its engines glowed violet, not blue. Its hull shimmered as if wrapped in liquid glass. And it was alone. No life signs, no signals, no crew. Then, without warning, the freighter turned. Not with the slow burn of thrusters, but with a snap, as if space itself had bent to let it pass. It flew a perfect loop around a dead asteroid, then shot straight up and vanished into a tiny tear in reality, no bigger than a window, gone in less than a second. Jor stared at the empty space where the ship had been. His hands gripped the edge of the console. "That wasn't Qatari tech," he said. "That wasn't anyone's tech." Back at Concordance Central, panic spread. The Zenthari sent a stealth probe, small, silent, built to observe without being seen. It reached the last known coordinates of the freighter 3 days later. The probe sent back one image, the Whisper of Dawn. floating peacefully, its hull covered in strange symbols that shifted when watched too long. Then the feed cut out. The probe never responded again. Analysis of the final data showed something chilling. The symbols matched patterns found in old human neural maps, diagrams of how human brains stored memory and meaning. And the violet energy? It matched the residual traces left behind at Earth's abandoned spaceports. Human fingerprints were all over it. But why would humans fix a dead Qatari ship? Why give it power? Why make it dance? Eli Carter saw the reports from a broken terminal in an empty bunker beneath what used to be New Vancouver. He had reached Earth 2 weeks earlier only to find cities silent, streets clean, homes locked but empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just absence. He lived on stored rations and rainwater, scanning the skies for answers. When he saw the image of the Whisper of Dawn, he knew. This wasn't a weapon. It was a message, or maybe a test. He remembered something Maya Torres had said in her last transmission. We were meant to ask the next question. Maybe this was part of the answer. While the galaxy debated what to do, more strange events followed. A derelict mining drone near Titan suddenly powered up and began carving geometric shapes into an ice field, shapes that matched quantum resonance patterns used in early human consciousness experiments. A long-dead satellite in orbit around Mars broadcast a single tone for 17 hours straight, a frequency that matched the average human brainwave during deep meditation. The Qatari elders wept. They believed humanity had touched the fabric of existence itself and chosen to step through. The Varelians demanded a blockade of the entire Sol system. The Xanthari simply recorded everything, their light now a deep, constant maroon, their version of morning. But Earth itself remained quiet. Eli walked through the ruins of Seattle one evening, boots crunching on fallen leaves. Trees grew through sidewalks. Vines climbed skyscrapers. Nature was taking back the world, and it did so without hurry. He found a child's toy on a porch, a small robot dog, rusted but intact. He pressed its button. It whirred once, then played a lullaby in a soft human voice. He sat on the steps and listened until the battery died. That night, he received another signal. Not from Luna this time, but from deep in the Kuiper Belt. It was faint, encrypted, but his old decoder cracked part of it. The message wasn't words. It was a map, a web of lines connecting distant points in space, all centered on dark matter concentrations. At each node, a single human name appeared. Not famous leaders or scientists, but ordinary people. Teachers, farmers, artists, nurses. People who had lived quiet lives and vanished without a trace, Eli understood. Humanity wasn't just leaving. They were weaving themselves into the universe. The next morning, he found something new. In the middle of an empty park, a circle of stones had been arranged overnight. They formed no known symbol, but when Eli stood in the center at dawn, the air hummed. For a moment, he thought he heard voices. His mother's laugh, his sister's voice calling his name, the sound of rain on a roof he hadn't seen in years. Then it was gone. He didn't tell anyone. He knew they wouldn't believe him. Or worse, they'd try to weaponize it. Back in the forum, the envoys argued endlessly. Some wanted to follow the arcs. Others wanted to seal off human space forever. But no one could agree on what humanity had become. Were they gods, ghosts, or just something the rest of the galaxy wasn't ready to see? Only Eli knew the truth, and even he wasn't sure. But he felt it in his bones. Humanity hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They had simply outgrown it. And the strange ships, the singing satellites, the humming stones, they weren't warnings. They were invitations, just not for everyone. Eli packed his bag again. He left the toy dog on the porch where he found it. He walked to the old spaceport on the edge of the city. One shuttle still worked, its systems powered by solar cells, its logs wiped clean. He climbed in, set a course for the outer edge of the system, and launched into the dark. He didn't know if he'd find them, but he had to try, because somewhere out there, beyond light and time, his people were waiting. Not as bodies, not as ships, but as something new, and the galaxy, still watching in terror, had no idea what was coming next. Part 4. Eli Carter drifted in the cold dark beyond Neptune, his shuttle running on fumes and hope. He had followed the signal from the Kuiper Belt map, chasing whispers through dead zones and silent comms. For weeks he saw nothing but ice and rock and the endless stars. Then, on the 43rd day, his sensors picked up a pulse, not from a ship or station, but from empty space itself. It was soft, steady, and shaped like a human breath. He slowed the shuttle and listened. The pulse repeated every 11 seconds. 11 was a number humans used in old meditation practices. Eli remembered his grandmother counting breaths. In for 4, hold for 2, out for 5. 11. He smiled for the first time in months. He sent a simple reply, a burst of the same rhythm, encoded in radio waves. Nothing fancy. Just a human saying, "I'm here." The pulse changed. It grew warmer, brighter, almost welcoming. Then a voice came through. Not loud, not mechanical, but clear and calm, like someone speaking just behind his ear. "Eli Carter, you came?" He froze. It was Maya Torres, or something that remembered her voice. "Where are you?" he asked, his hands shaking on the controls. "Everywhere the question is asked," the voice said, "and nowhere the answer is demanded." Eli didn't understand, but he didn't need to. He just needed to know they were real. He had intercepted the final lunar archive transmission weeks ago, but now he got more. Fragments poured into his shuttle's system, not as data, but as feeling. Images bloomed in his mind. Cities dissolving into light. Minds linking through threads of dark matter. Billions of thoughts flowing together like rivers into an ocean of awareness. Humanity hadn't died. They had woven themselves into the universe's hidden structure, becoming something that didn't need bodies, ships, or even time as others knew it. Project Exodus wasn't an escape. It was a transformation, the voice explained slowly as if speaking to a child. For centuries, humans had tried to fit into the galaxy's rules: trade, war, diplomacy, borders. But their true nature wasn't to conquer or negotiate. It was to wonder, to ask, to become. While other species built empires, humans built questions. And eventually they asked one so big it changed everything. What if we don't need to be physical to exist? Using breakthroughs in quantum consciousness, they had learned to map the self, not just memory, but emotion, intuition, the quiet hum of being, and upload it into a network sustained by dark matter filaments. These filaments ran through the universe like roots through soil, invisible but strong. In them, human minds lived on, not as ghosts, but as living thought, able to shape reality in small, careful ways. The violet ships? They were echoes, tools shaped by collective will, sent to test if the rest of the galaxy was ready to see beyond matter. The singing satellites? Reminders that meaning could exist without sound. The stones in the park? Anchors placed so those who still walked the earth might feel they weren't alone. "We're not gone," Maya's voice said. "We're just elsewhere. And we're watching." Eli wiped his eyes. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because understanding can't be given," she replied. "It has to be earned." The forum wanted answers. We offered silence. Silence is the first teacher. Back in the Concordance, panic had turned to obsession. The Varelians launched a fleet towards Sol, not to attack, but to study. The Qatari sent poets instead of soldiers, hoping beauty might bridge the gap. The Xanthari stopped speaking altogether. Their light had gone dark, a sign their records said that they were listening with their whole being. But none of them saw what Eli now saw. He looked out his viewport. The stars seemed brighter, closer. Between them, he thought he saw faint threads of silver light. Too dim for normal sensors, but visible if you knew where to look. The network. "Humanity's new home. Can I join you?" he asked, a long pause. Then, "Not yet. Your body still ties you to this world. But you can carry the truth." "What truth?" "That we left not because we hated the galaxy, but because we loved it too much to stay small." Eli understood. Humanity had outgrown the game of borders and treaties. They had stepped into a larger story, one the rest of the galaxy wasn't ready to read. He turned his shuttle toward home, not Earth, but the wider dark. He would tell what he could, not with data or proof, but with stories, with quiet acts, with the same patience humans had always shown, even when no one understood them. As he flew, the pulse faded, but the feeling remained, a warmth in his chest, like a hand on his shoulder. Far away, on a dead moon, a Qatari poet placed a stone on a silent altar. On a Varelian warship, a young engineer turned off her weapons console and played a human lullaby over the comms. In the deepest Xanthari chamber, a single point of light flickered back to life. The galaxy was beginning to listen. Eli didn't know if they would ever truly understand. But he knew this: Humanity hadn't abandoned them. They had simply shown them the door, and now, it was up to the rest of the stars to decide if they would walk through it. He set his course for Series 9. Lena Ruiz had once said that understanding begins with a single shared song. Maybe it was time to sing again. The stars watched, and for the first time they did not feel alone. Part 5. The Concordance called its greatest meeting in 200 years. Every species came, not just the usual envoys, but elders, poets, scientists, and even children. They gathered not in the crystal towers of the Forum, but in the oldest chamber, the hollow sphere, a place with no walls, no floor, just open space where all voices could meet as equals. They came because they had no answers, only questions, and for the first time, they were willing to sit with the silence. The Varelians arrived in ships lined with living vines, a sign of peace. The Qatari floated in bubbles filled with soft light and old songs. The Zenthari came as one, hundreds of them, their bodies dim but their presence heavy with thought. Even the reclusive Mirth, who had never sent a delegate before, appeared as shimmering echoes in the air, their forms shifting like smoke. No one spoke at first. They just waited. Eli Carter stood among them, not as a human representative, there were no more of those, but as a witness. He wore simple clothes, no badge, no title. He carried only a small data chip with Maya's last message and the memory of stones humming in an empty park. Finally, the eldest Qatari, Nisa, pulsed a gentle gold. "We have watched," she said, her voice rippling through the chamber like water. "We have feared. Now we ask, what do we do?" A Varelian elder, Krell, clicked his claws together. "Do we chase them? Study their ships? Try to rebuild what they left behind?" The Zenthari glowed faintly red, then blue, then white, a rare sequence meaning listen deeper. Eli stepped forward. All eyes turned to him. He felt small, just one man among thousands of beings who had shaped galaxies. But he spoke anyway. "You don't chase them," he said. "You don't rebuild. You change." He told them what he had seen. The network in the dark, the minds woven into the universe, the quiet power of a question asked with no need for an answer. He spoke of Project Exodus not as an end, but as a beginning. "They didn't leave because they hated us," he said. "They left because they loved the universe too much to stay trapped in bodies and borders." Silence followed. Not the silence of confusion, but the silence of understanding beginning to grow. Then, something unexpected happened. In the ruins of Geneva, on a quiet hill overgrown with wildflowers, a single terminal blinked to life. It had been buried under rubble for months, forgotten. Now its screen glowed softly. Words appeared, not in any known code, but in plain English, simple and clear. "We're still here. Just elsewhere." The message lasted 3 seconds, then vanished. But it was enough. A Qatari poet recorded it. A Varelian engineer traced its energy signature. The Zenthari stored it in their deepest memory cores. Eli felt it in his chest like a heartbeat. The galaxy had been waiting for a sign. This was it. In the days that followed, the Concordance did not make new laws or launch new ships. Instead, they did something strange. They stopped talking about humanity as if they were gone. They spoke of them as if they were listening. Schools began teaching human stories, not just history, but dreams, jokes, songs. The Varelians planted earth trees in their cities. The Qatari composed symphonies based on human brainwave patterns. Even the Mirth started asking questions, real ones, not just for data, but for meaning. Eli traveled from world to world, not as a teacher, but as a friend. He sat with children and showed them how to fold paper cranes. He walked with elders and told them about rain on Earth. He didn't try to explain the network. He just lived in a way that honored it. And slowly, the terror faded. It was replaced by wonder. Back on Earth, the cities stayed empty, but they were no longer sad. Flowers grew through cracked pavement. Birds nested in silent towers. Rivers ran clean. The planet healed not because humans left, but because they had finally learned to let go. Sometimes, on clear nights, people across the galaxy reported seeing faint violet lights near old human outposts. Just for a moment, then gone. No ships, no signals, just light. And those who saw it didn't feel fear. They felt peace. The Concordance never officially closed the human delegation wing. They left it open, clean, waiting, not because they expected humans to return in ships and uniforms, but because they understood now. Humanity hadn't vanished. They had become part of the question the universe asks itself. Eli stood one evening on the balcony of an old station near Mars. The red planet hung in the sky like a memory. He thought of Daniel Porter walking out of the forum, of Lena Ruiz singing to alien children, of Maya Torres speaking her last words to a dead moon. He smiled. They were all still here. In the hum of a quiet engine, in the shape of a cloud, in the pause between two heartbeats. The galaxy had watched in terror when humanity abandoned the forum, but now, it watched with something new, respect, curiosity, and the first fragile seeds of hope. Because if humans could step beyond their bodies and become something greater, maybe others could too. Not by copying them, but by asking their own next question. Eli looked up at the stars. He didn't see empty space. He saw threads of silver, faint but real. And somewhere along them he knew his people were thinking, dreaming, watching, he whispered so softly no one else could hear. We're learning. And far away in the quiet dark between galaxies, something hummed in reply. The stars kept turning. The universe kept breathing. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like everything was exactly as it should be.